Welcome to Junkyard Theory, everybody. And I am fanboying right now because I got Jennifer Odell in the studio. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Ayuba one.
Jennifer is somebody I've had an eye on to get on the show for quite a while because back in 2002, there was this little show called The Lost World. It had dinosaurs, and I was a dinosaur fan. I still am. Anything about dinosaurs, paleontology kind of got me perked up. And then there was this jungle-clad girl in this particular show, and even before I knew I liked girls, I was already hooked onto the show. And I guess I can say the same for pretty much every guy who watched it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. It wasn't an easy costume to wear.
But certainly, I mean, that show, it stood the test of time because it's kind of become like a cult favorite for so many people, and you have the occasional reruns going on TV. And yeah, it's had a shelf life on its own. So, but Jennifer, I want to talk a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get into the industry? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, gosh, it's very straightforward. I was 8 years old, and the first audition I ever went on, I booked for a national candy commercial, and it got me my SAG card. And I was like, this is easy. And it was fun. And, I was a little girl who was extremely independent, not afraid of being in front of anybody. And I could walk into a room and take direction without, my mom or dad being in the room with me. And ultimately, that's what, a director and producer wants to see is that, especially with kids, that they're able to not be afraid of being on camera and being directed and so forth. So, and then I did a few commercials and stuff when I was little, and then I got out of it for a little while, and my parents moved to a different part of California, and I got into theater. And so I was still acting. And then when I was about 23, I made my way back to Los Angeles because I was at a point in my life where I wasn't doing what I wanted to be doing with my life, and I just hightailed it to LA with everything in my car, and I didn't know where I was going to live or what I was going to do, but I knew that something was calling me, and I knew that that's where I needed to be. And then a year later, through random acts of meeting certain people, I randomly ran into somebody at a party one night, and he said, this is typical Los Angeles, where a guy walks up to you and says, oh, I'm a producer, here's my card. It's like, oh yeah, okay, in the trash. But I followed up with this, and I went to the actual audition, booked the part, didn't have an agent. And one of the guys who played the lead bad guy, Damian Chapa, who was a really big actor back then at the time, he introduced me to my first agent. And a year later, I was doing Lost World. So, yeah.
That last bit was classic Hollywood.
Yeah. It was. And, it's funny because I actually ran into that guy, I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago at another Hollywood party. And I went, oh my God, you helped launch my career. And I was so appreciative to him for that. But it random. Yeah, totally random that happened. So meant to be, I guess.
Yeah. And talk to me a bit about Lost World, because what the pilot was versus what the rest of the series, happened to be. It was like, it wasn't necessarily like the same. Like, you guys didn't necessarily start off thinking that this was going to get picked up for a series, but it...
Well, I mean, you always hope. I mean, at the time, it was the first big thing that I had done. I had done some television. Like I did a couple of episodes on 90210, which for me I had watched all through high school. And so that was a massive show for me. So actually getting on that show, I was like, oh yeah, I'm big stuff now. Or at least I'm starting to get there. I thought that was pretty cool at the time. But I didn't realize I was going to be doing something as cool as what Lost World turned out to be. I had no idea that I was going to become this action hero type character, especially wearing a lap running around in the jungle. I thought I was like, going to be on a soap opera or, some Hollywood, television show or whatever that shoots in Los Angeles. I had no idea that I'd be on my own at 24 in Australia shooting this massive, massive production. So it was really otherworldly to me when it happened. And I was just thanking my lucky stars that I stuck with my gut, like with what I wanted to do with my life. So yeah, when we first started that production, it was big. It was this massive, massive undertaking. It was the biggest TV show at the time. I mean, Xena and Hercules were going on right about then. So it was like all that action adventure genre that was really popular. So I think that we were kind of riding on their coattails a little bit. And we got a lot of their stunt people and a lot of their actors because they shot those shows over in New Zealand. So, but like I was telling you earlier, we had no idea that the show was going to be as big as it turned out to be. So, and it wasn't an easy show to shoot because it was an hour action adventure, which had to do with not only tons of stunt stuff, but tons of special effects, tons of makeup. So it was like we were shooting a film in a week or two. So it was a lot of work.
The third season, I think you guys pulled it off in record time, right?
Yeah. Well, it's something that the producers said, well, if you can shoot 14 pages in a week, then you can shoot 11 pages in a week. Or, they kept trying to cut it down on us every single year, which, we ended up doing, but it like I said, it wasn't an easy undertaking. It was a difficult show to shoot, but we were all so fortunate to be doing it at the same time. And it had a lot to do with the people that we were working with, the camaraderie. And even still to this day, when I went back to Australia 3 years ago, I had a meetup with as many people as from the show that I could get together. And still to this day, they said that it was the best show that they've ever worked on.
Next time you do that, you should probably do a live.
I know.
You really have to. You really have to get everybody together.
Well, I mean, I went down and stayed with Rachel for a week. And other than that, I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody else because they're kind of spread all over the world. But a lot of the crew I was able to get together, which was really nice. It was really some of the actors on the show I was able to get together, and we all went out to dinner one night, but that was it. But yeah, I was actually talking to Nick about doing something like that. I'd like to do a documentary, a behind the scenes documentary on the show.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because there's probably like a lot of people who would be, lining up to see that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'd love to make it happen, but with COVID and everything that's going on with the restrictions down in Australia, it's literally just put a halt because this is something that we have actually spoken about since I came back from Australia, because I hadn't seen anybody in 16 years. So it was surreal when I was there, and I didn't want to leave because I had spent so much time there, and so much of my heart was there with so many people too. It was really difficult for me to come home. But then after the fact, yeah, I wanted to go back, and we were talking about it, and there were some things that were in play, but then COVID happened, and And I don't think anybody's going to be doing much down there for a while until all of this is kind of in the clear.
That's true. Something that kind of struck me, I revisited The Lost World, I think maybe 10 years after it ended. It was like quite a while back, and then the special effects, everything that has aged, but the appeal of the show lied with the human characters, because every single episode, like you had dinosaurs, you had lizard people, Neanderthals, all those. I remember being shit scared of the makeup on the lizard man. Like that was horrifying. Like for a kid who was like, I don't know, 7, 8 years, like, and you see that face on TV, that was scary.
You should have
Scary
seen
as
him.
hell.
So that was Jerome Ellers, who actually he passed away just a couple of years ago, sadly, because he was one of our favorite people to come on the show. And he played another character without his makeup on the
What,
show
really?
as well. Yeah, I think
Okay.
it was one of the pirate episodes.
Uh-huh.
I vaguely remember him being a
Okay.
pirate. Anyway, every time he came on, and he had to go through, 4 hours of makeup with the contacts and the teeth and fitting of that thing on his head. And back then the prosthetics weren't as good as what they are now. And that thing barely moved on his face. And he couldn't take it off all day. So he was literally in that thing for like 12 hours a day. We felt so bad for him.
Did you guys like feed him with a straw or something like that?
Yeah. Well, he was able to take his teeth out. And what those guys went through. Oh my gosh.
But like I was saying before, like the appeal of the show lied with the human characters, and they kind of the writers, they made a really I think they took some really good decisions and risks with the characters over the course of 3 seasons, and the fact that it didn't get picked up for a 4th and 5th.
Well, no, like I said, we did get picked up for seasons 4 and 5.
They were didn't happen though.
Yeah, but then the show, because of what was going on with Telescene, the production company in Canada, the show just went under. So,
but talk to me, Jennifer, a little bit about the character of Veronica Layton. The name Layton, I've always meant to ask: was it like a play on John Clayton's last name? Because that's Tarzan, and you got a Jungle Girl here.
You know what? I honestly can't remember, to be completely honest, but I would not put it past the writers for thinking that way, because they were extremely clever with taking tidbits of other characters that have been written in history, and tying them up within our storyline. I remember going to them multiple times going, how do you guys do this? Like Judy and Gar were 2 of the cleverest people I've ever met. Especially with how, they came onto the show, I think halfway through the first season, where there were some writers within the show that kind of left. Guy was one of our main writers, and he was really good friends with them too. And they just collaborated really well within our storyline, and they had to rush with their scripts and their writing, because when we came onto the show, they had like 4 or 5 scripts ready to go, and they had somewhat of our storyline, kind of like our Bible of what was going to happen within that season. But we were shooting at such a fast pace, it was hard for them to almost keep up because of how quickly we were having to keep the show going. Okay. So, yeah, they were phenomenal writers, and they still are. But and they write these sci-fi books that are just incredible. So they put a lot of people to shame, that's for sure. We got lucky with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So about Veronica Layton's character, you started changing, or like after the pilot, you started adding like your own touches. You started suggesting changes. Talk to me a little bit about that process.
You mean with like my costume? And so
Costume
Arthur,
and the character, both of those.
okay, so well, you know what? I'll just put this out there because I haven't really talked to too many people about this. So when we did the pilot episode, Richard Franklin, who has also passed away since then, he was the director of the pilot and a couple of the episodes of the show, and he wanted me to play this little girl running through the jungle. I was like, I don't see her that way. And so the pilot for me was probably one of the worst acting pieces that I have ever done. I because I was in such conflict with the character and with the director telling me what to do, and it was the first really big thing that I was leading. And so I was like, well, okay, I've got to listen to the director. He knows what he's doing. You know, I should. So it was hard for me to play her at first because I didn't understand her. I couldn't grasp where she was coming from. So over time, especially within the first season, the first few episodes of the show, you know, the producers wanted me to look like Barbarella, and you know, my hair was being curled and, you know, with literally big, huge curls. And we were in the middle of the rainforest. They were having to curl my hair 4 times a day because it would just go drop. And then the costume that they put me in was, like I said, it was real leather, and it was hard and stiff and uncomfortable, and it didn't fit me the right way. So, so I made a few changes and talked to, well, I first tried to change the way that I looked because my hair is actually naturally curly. It will crunch up and go curly like that on its own. And it just worked a whole lot better for the character. So it took me a few seasons to really get what I wanted. And then in between the first and the second season, I said, that's it. I can't wear that costume anymore. And so I suggested, and I had somebody write out, sorry, my sinuses are killing me right now. I had somebody draw out exactly the way that I wanted the costume to look on me. And I said I wanted boots and not sandals, because I was running through the jungle all of the time. And so I was rolling my ankle all of the time. It was just, not only was it not comfortable and I was freezing, I was getting bit by bugs, and I was getting hurt where I really didn't need to be. Sure. So I designed my own costume, went and got the material, and then sent it to the producers before the pre started with the second season, and got approval for all of it. So I got my way in the second season, at least.
And back then, you were playing this character who essentially turned out to be a badass. And that was amazing. You had Marguerite on the other side, who was, I guess, how do you put this? More in the British way, you would say, I guess, like proper.
Yeah.
Like a proper lady who eventually changes through association and also like based on the situation that she's put in. But the original Lost World, the novel, the book that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote, it had no female characters journeying to the battle.
Right.
So the TV show did something different by putting 2 female characters in there.
Correct.
And for something that took place in the was created in the late 90s and early 2000s, that was quite progressive. Is progressive the word?
Well, it's not. Look, they needed the eye candy.
That is true. I said before,
they needed the eye candy to make it more sellable of a show. And like I said, the demographic of the show was not just, you know, people who like dinosaurs or, you know, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's books. They needed the demographic to be widened. So, and you know, and you need that that play, you need the love interest and so forth,
True,
and you
true.
needed it to be more family associative. So
Yeah, I mean, it might have worked with. I don't know if it would have worked as a film, the way that it was written, but for a TV series where you run, 22, 23 episodes over the course of multiple years, yeah, you're right. Like you definitely need that dynamic.
yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's grateful that they included you guys. So everyone.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you.
Talking a little bit about like what the fourth and fifth seasons would have been, because I read up somewhere that they were planning on having Sherlock Holmes for like an episode or something. Was it Sherlock Holmes?
Well, we did an episode that was called "The Knife," and it was like a Sherlock Holmes. Oh no,
Oh,
no, no, no!
really?
Wait, that
No,
was
not.
that was Jack the Ripper. That was the Jack the Ripper episode.
Yeah, because I don't remember
Um,
Sherlock Holmes being introduced
no,
in
no,
this
no.
season.
I
So,
wouldn't put it past them.
hmm.
I've read the arc of where they were going with seasons 4 and 5. I, but I read like the episodes of what was gonna be happening. I'd have to brush myself up on it though to say if that was an actual fact or not.
Gotcha. So, as an actress, you were 24 years old. You were, put in the boots of this one girl character, badass. How? Okay. What was the learning curve like in terms of acting? And like, you did most of your own stunts too. And I'm pretty sure you accidentally. There were so many times that you punched someone in the face too. Yeah.
No, not with Lost World. There was a few other things that I've done that I
Okay.
actually punched
Okay. That's
somebody in the
probably
face.
where I
But
got
that
that
was not
from.
my fault. When you're doing choreography and you come down on somebody and they come up when they're supposed to go back, it's not my fault.
Fair enough.
I mean, there were accidents that happened, but yeah, I was thrown into the deep end,
Hmm.
and just said, "Here you go, sink or swim." And I definitely rose to the top. And in between, I don't know if you noticed, but in between seasons 1 and 2, I had a pretty big body morph that happened. In between, there was like 4 or 5 months in between where we were off, and I was working out like a freaking fiend. I was doing spin classes, yoga classes, weightlifting, just to morph my body into Veronica, of what I thought that she should look like. Because when I got cast in it, I really didn't have any time. I had 2 weeks before we started shooting. So I didn't have a prep time to get ready for this character, if you will. I was
Sure.
really thrown into the deep end. So while I was over there, I didn't have enough time to get ready either, because I was in my costume and we were shooting 15 hours a day sometimes, and we'd only have 10-hour turnarounds, which gives you enough time to take a shower, go to bed, wake up, take a shower, get in the car. You don't have a whole lot of time in between. So, yeah, I mean, I developed Veronica over the course of shooting. When you're on set every single day in, day out, with a ton of dialogue and a ton of action stuff, you just do it. And not only that, it was so much fun. I was having an absolute blast. And the first season, I was like, "Oh no, I can do it." And the stunt guys were like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." And there was a lot of it had to do with the fact that I really wanted to prove myself. I really wanted to prove not only to myself, but I wanted to prove to the directors and everybody else around me, and show them that I could play this character properly. And not only that, sometimes there was one stunt girl, Cherie, who was fantastic, and she actually looked like me in my costume. But a lot of the other girls who where my stunt double didn't look like me in my costume. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that stunt. But I had a lot of fun doing it, you know. I mean, and thank God I didn't get hurt, and I really trusted all the stunt coordinators and the safety riggers and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, starting off from the Lost World and then, seeing where your career has gone, like past the Lost World, as an actress, how do you kind of like, prepare for a role? Talk to me a bit about that process.
Well, it depends on what's thrown at me. So when I came back and we found out that the show was not going anymore, I knew that I had to continue acting, and I really wanted to, but my career was going really well at that time. And I was in my late 20s, and then I started getting offers. So, and then I got an episode on Nip Tuck, which really, that was a show at the time that was really risque. It was on FX, which was like a new cable network that everybody was watching it. And it was a lot of the directors and producers were watching these types of shows that were taking risks, if you will, and kind of like pushing the boundaries. The writers were pushing the boundaries. And, yeah, and I got lucky and got on that show, and then I started getting more offers and so forth, and then I got pregnant. So I was working up until I did a couple of weeks on General Hospital when I was 5 months pregnant. It was a short character. I was only on it for a few weeks, and then after my first son was born, I did an episode on The Closer. And actually, funnily enough, Will Snow was on the very same episode, and because he happened to be living over here too. So it was really funny that we happened to be on the same episode and kind of be working together. We weren't in the same scene, but and then after that, I did a lot more television, but I really wanted to break into comedy. And that's kind of a hard thing to do when you're known as a dramatic actress. With a lot of the casting directors, it's kind of like you have to have credit to get credit.
Yeah.
You've gotta.
But where are you going to get the credit from?
Yeah, right. So you've got to kind of like, you got to go. They've got to like see you at Groundlings Theater or doing improv or something like that. And then I booked a part on 2.5 Men, and it kind of broke that boundary. So Jeff Greenberg was one of the casting directors, and he also cast me on Modern Family and not The Good Doctor. It was another show that Ty Burrell did before Modern Family. Anyway, so yeah, I broke that boundary and was able to start doing half-hour comedies. And when I did that, I was like, oh my God, this is the kind of show I want to be on. Because going from doing an action adventure hour television show where you're shooting 14 pages a day sometimes, and then going to a half hour, it's a day job. You walk in to the studios, you read your script around the round table, say hello to some people, and then you go home. You nick off before lunchtime. And then you come back and do another read through, maybe do a walkthrough, go to wardrobe, and then go home. And it's still only like noon, and then and then they shoot. The only day that they shoot is like on Thursday, and then they do the live audience on Friday. So these people are getting paid astronomical amounts of money for these half-hour shows, and they're like 9 to 5. They're not even 9 to 5. So you can have a family, you can have your weekends off. I'm like, oh my God, this is a great job. So it was nice to break into the half-hour scene. So I got a taste of all of that. And like I said, I did a couple of weeks on General Hospital, and that is holy crap, that is a different ballgame. And I got to give it up to all of those actors, because it's not easy. Those guys have to spit out, and they have to shoot about 100 pages of dialogue a day.
Wow.
Yeah, that's bananas.
A
So
day.
a day, every day they have to shoot almost 100 pages a day. So, and I'd never done a daytime soap opera before. So I got cast in it. I didn't even audition for it because they saw me on Nip Tuck and they called me in and said, we want to hire you for this job. And I said, yeah, of course. I love General Hospital. I had quite a few friends that were on Days of Our Lives. But General Hospitals was known to be one of those shows that was like a really good soap opera that was good to work on. There weren't too many people that came off of that didn't like it. You know, there weren't attitudes, if you will. So I'm down in my dressing room and there's a box that's sitting in the top of my dressing room, and they just call your scene number, and then you have to make your way up to the stage. And then they do a little bit of blocking, do one or two run throughs, and then shoot. And they don't have time. If you screw up, as long as you get the words out, they don't care. You move on. It's like, I'm like, wait, I want to go again. And they go, nope, we're good. And they just move on. So that was one of the scariest moments that I'd ever had.
That would have been properly stressful.
Yeah. It was very stressful.
Nick McKinless, who was on the show before, and through whom we managed to get you on the show. Both of you had worked on Lost World. Nick played an ape man.
He played a couple different characters. Yeah. He played an ape man to begin with, and then he was a rock man. I actually found this one scene of us fighting one another, but it was always really hard for me to see what he looked like because he was completely made up in prosthetic stuff. I was like, yeah, this guy's body's really hot, but I have no idea what he looks like in his face. Yeah, it was but we had guys like that come on the show like all the time. You know, they were always our background guys or our stunt guys, but they were always really great. We always had the best stuntmen that came on, and they were always super cool and fun. And but then randomly he looked me up about 3 years ago, and when he was in Los Angeles, and said, I don't know if you remember me, but you know, you want to go have a drink? And I looked at his Instagram page and he just like drooled at the mouth. And and that's our story. We've been together ever since. So
pretty simple but efficient. Shout out to Nick for all of that and for being an awesome dude all around. So
he's doing some great things. I'm really proud of him. He's gone from being a stuntman to a stunt coordinator and working on some of the biggest projects in the world and biggest films that have ever been done. And now he's going to be, and now he's gone. He's been doing second unit directing for a little while now, and he's shooting his first feature next year. So I'm very, very proud of him. Yeah.
Cannot wait to see that because he was talking about that on the show too. So fingers crossed and wishing him all the best.
Yeah.
So back when I tend to go back to the Lost World because
that's okay. Okay. Lots of great memories and stories. So ask me whatever you want.
Yeah. So you said that you guys were riding on the coattails of Cena and Hercules. So. Which were amazing shows at the same time. Was there any sort of competition sort of thing that you guys were like, all right, those guys did something like this, we probably got to try something out, kind of like that friendly competition between?
No, because they were shooting in New Zealand, so we had no qualms with them whatsoever. But like I said, when their show ended, we actually got a lot of their stunt people. because they were out of work, so they came back to Australia. So we were
Gotcha.
able to, because it was slim pickings. We had to actually rotate a couple of our actors
Mm-hmm.
on the show. They played different characters. So
Right. I think they did that with Cena and Hercules too. Like you had
oh,
the
I'm
same actor
sure.
coming in to play. Yeah.
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, being the only American in a cast of Australians,
Yeah.
what was how okay? What's I don't know how to phrase this question, but they were supposed to be British, and I don't exactly remember what Veronica Layton's character was supposed to be, like what nationality, but bringing that dynamic into the whole scene, what was that
Hmm.
like? Because you have people coming in from like all around the world, like different
Hmm.
places. How that worked, you advantage.
Well, she was supposed to be born. Her character was supposed to be born in the Lost World, so she wasn't necessarily supposed to be from
Oh,
anywhere
she
except
was born there. Okay, gotcha.
from
Yep.
there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, through the course of the first season of playing her, I knew that I had to somehow lose my California accent, because and when I talk in my voice like this, you can hear it, but when I talk in a deeper, lower octave like this, I lose it.
Mm.
So I pronunciate my words a lot different when my voice is deeper. And so this was Veronica's voice. She was more level, because I didn't want her to be from any particular place, like where I'm talking now, where I'm in my head more. So I had to figure that out over the course of time. It took me a little while to really get to know who she was, and living her day in, day out, and wearing that costume day in, day out. It took me a while, but I got there.
Now that you say it, like the California accent, it certainly is kind of nasal, like it's from like this region, and then you
Yeah.
have like various other accents. Like the British one, it kind of goes from like here.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever work with like a dialect coach? Maybe
I
not for Lost World, but maybe after.
Yeah, well, there was a few episodes. Let me think. There's one episode, the one that I was talking about earlier, the knife, the Jack the Ripper episode, where I had to have a heavy Cockney accent. I had to talk like this. It was, and it wasn't quite there. What was some of my? What did I say? I just saw it. Every now and then I'll pass through Amazon Prime and I'll pick up a scene, and they just crack me up. And I can't remember what my dialogue was, but I remember we had to go into ADR, which is additional digital
Yeah.
recording on the weekends to like perfect it, and I'll never forget. Peter McCauley was in there, and he was outside the booth trying to guide me through this Cockney, which is a really street English. It's kind of a dirty English, yeah, and I'll never forget him trying to do that with me, because it's not easy. It's not easy, but like I said, I eventually got there.
We have a question here from somebody who's watching the stream. So, do you still keep in contact with all of the cast members from the Lost World?
I keep in contact with Rachel Blakely. Her and I probably talk the most out of anybody. But I haven't spoken to her in like a year. So I've been meaning to catch up with her. I haven't spoken with David or Peter or Michael in quite some time. And Will, we text and talk on occasion, but that's about it. Yeah. But like about 2 years ago, we were doing a lot more Zoom conferences and that kind of thing, just trying to catch up. Myself, Will, and Rachel.
We have a surprise cameo right now.
Ooh. My
Like,
boyfriend.
no, I mean the person who's like right under your nose.
Oh, yes. Say hi. I This is Sugar. Say hi.
Hi.
She's like, Mom, what are you doing? She was really freaked out last night. She's been like on top of me. We, for the first time in like over 10 or gosh, 15 years, we got major thunderstorms and rain here. So we've been in a heavy drought for years. So anyways, it was freaking her out. So she was like shaking it on top of me. Say hello.
And about sitting with like the same character for around 3 years, I'm assuming like it became easier to step into Renakash's shoes as time went by. And then were there any characteristics that kind of from this particular character, this fictionalized character, that crept into you?
Real life?
Yeah, into real life. Was there anything that you kind of like took home from the show?
I'm a lot like Veronica. I'm a very independent, very strong-willed woman. And after I really went with my gut instinct on who and how I should play her, it was second nature for me to play her. But playing a character for 8 months every year, every single day, isn't easy, especially with the workload that they put on us. The only caveat with that was this wonderful side bit that we were able to do where I was able to play different characters. I had to actually, when they wanted to incorporate a few scenes with my mother, I really had to fight for that character to play her because they wanted to hire somebody else. And I went, please give me the opportunity to play this character. If there's anybody who knows how to play my mother, it would be me. And so they were like, well, and they went back and forth with the idea. And, we were able to we traveled to different destinations. With the Lost World, you can do anything. So there was a scene, I think it was the first season, where Stone Cold, where these ghosts embodied our bodies. And so we got to play a different character in a different role. And then we had a few Western episodes where we not only looked different, but we could act different. And, so all of us loved playing those different characters. And it was such a joy that we still got to work with the same people, but we got to get to play different characters, So that was one of the great things about the show.
Truly. Because, you have the same tone going in, and then you have like a Western episode or something come up, and it's like, oh, today's gonna be different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I don't remember if it was like the end of the first season or the second one where you have all the male characters seemingly die. Was it the end of the first season or the second one? I can't really remember. Or maybe it was mid-season.
So the end of the first season, all of the guys got separated, and then Rachel and I were stuck together. Yes. And then we ended up finding them. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one. I remember being so, as a kid, I actually remember crying because I thought all the guys died. Me and my brother, we literally cried. We thought that was the end.
Oh my God, you're so cute.
But then, a couple days later, all right, this particular channel shows us the reel for the second season. They were like, oh, they're not dead. They're coming back.
They're back.
Everybody off. It's those little memories, those that kind of stick with you. So, like I was saying before, it stood the test of time, and that show, it has its own shelf life. So
yeah. Good. I'm glad we're memorable.
Halfway around the world, here in Sri Lanka. So
that's awesome. I love it.
You are also a trained photographer, right? You started photography in 2008. So talk to me a little bit about your life besides acting.
Well, I've always been into photography in one way or the other. I was the one on set with a video camera that was this big, and I'd bring it on set and I'd film stuff and behind the scenes. And I got my first Canon camera while I was over there because they put us up in these beautiful apartment buildings that were right on the water. So the sun would come up on the water every morning. It was one of the most spectacular sightings that I'd ever seen when I first moved over there, and it still is one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to. So I got into it a long time ago, and when I was on set every single day, you can't help but pay attention to how things are being lit and how everybody else is doing their job. So I always tried to pay attention to how the camera operators were looking at what they wanted to shoot and how they wanted to shoot it. And honestly, and the time that it took for them to set the lighting up properly and how they read the light just by looking at it. And so I learned a lot over there. I was very observant. And when I came back home and I had my kids, I started photographing them, and I fell in love with photographing them. And then I needed to do something. Being an artist, I always have to do something and work for myself and make money being an artist. And I got a bunch of camera equipment and said, I'm going to do this. And honestly, I kind of like learned trial and error, learned on my own, did a lot of online classes and that kind of thing to really learn how to, use my equipment and read light. And I really figured I shot everything. I shot dogs and babies and scenery and families and headshots and houses and anything that I could get my hands on to really kind of see what I was good at. And I'm really good with people. So, and I enjoyed shooting people. So, I became really good at shooting headshots. But I also really fell in love with shooting newborns and women who were pregnant. So I did a lot of online classes for that. There's an amazing Australian photographer. Her name's Kelly Brown, and she is an incredible newborn photographer. So I took all of her classes and stuff. But with doing newborns, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So now I pretty much I do a lot of scenery type stuff. I do a lot of landscape type stuff. And then I also do, my specialty is headshots and family photography. So, and I just do that on the side just because I love it. And I have a clientele built up who calls me every year to do that stuff. So keeps me busy.
Any chance we'll see you shooting 24 photographs per second?
24 foot, what?
Take over filmmaking, I mean.
Oh, well, you never know. Crazier things have happened.
Because that's natural progression right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you never know. I think if I did something like that, I'd really like to shoot a documentary. I love watching documentaries, and I have a heartfelt passion for human rights and what's really going on with the world. And seeing, I don't even watch the news and stuff anymore. There's just no point. You don't know what's real and what's not. So
that's true.
So yeah, you never know. I've kind of got the writing bug and stuff again right now. So Nick and I are always, since we're, both our heads are in the movie making business, we're always throwing ideas back and forth to one another. And I've got a project that I'm taking under my wings right now that will hopefully come to light next year. So
Excited.
Yeah.
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 Uh, Talk to me a little bit about the whole writing thing. So, having performed up until now and reading scripts and
Mhm.
consuming loads of other materials, how has this kind of like helped you maybe write better, hopefully better for the parts? Because like sometimes you writers write stuff and it works on
Mhm.
paper, but when you start, when the actors they try to read it or like perform it, it just doesn't work. So coming
Yeah.
from an actor's perspective, an actor's background, has this kind of like contributed in any constructive way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the best writers and directors used to be actors at one point. They've been reading scripts their entire life. But it's also about you as an actor having the vision, and putting that down on paper. It's not my forte. It's something that I've definitely had to practice at. And with my busy lifestyle, I have two kids that I'm with and trying to develop into these new world knightly men, and that's not an easy task to undertake. But my oldest is going to be 17 next year, and so he's almost out of the house, and my other one's going to be 12 here pretty soon. So I have a little more time on my hands these days, so I'm trying to use that wisely with other things like writing, because I know that I am good at it, but it is daunting because I've read such great work, so I'm constantly my own worst critic. I compare myself to other people. And I mean, I wrote a script quite a few years ago. It's a sci-fi series, with me in mind, and I developed it for quite a few months, and then I've shelved it for a couple of years. And I always like to come back to it and kind of like try to develop that again. But I've got another idea right now that that I'm going to go with and sit down and try to write for the next few years. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't want to give too much away.
So when you come back, you pick up something that you've written like 2 years ago. You have that moment where you're like, "Oh, this is better than I thought," and maybe
Oh,
sometimes
for
like,
sure.
"What was I
Yeah.
thinking?"
I have both of those thoughts. Yeah. I come back to it with fresh eyes because I forget a lot about what I had written. And I went, oh man, that's really good. And then there's other pages where I was like, what was I thinking? That's terrible. And I'll throw it away. But I mean, I think it's all relative of where I'm at in my life too. So, and the things that I've
Totally.
developed and the stuff that that I've seen that's been developed on television too, because I'm comparing it with a lot of stuff like that, and everything that's come out on television. God, there's a lot of good TV out right now. A lot of good television. Um, I'm really in love with Ted Lasso right now, not only for the comedy aspect, but like what we were talking about earlier, of the family, good-hearted dynamic that Lost World had. That's what Ted Lasso has in it, and I think that's what people are craving these days. Like people
True.
being human and kind and loving to one another. Because right now that isn't going on.
Those are the stories that last with the
Mm-hmm.
audience's mind for a long time.
Mm.
Like you have so much content that's being produced on an annual basis or even like a monthly basis. But how many of those actually, how many of those do you remember after
100%.
like a year or so?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was really impressed with how Netflix did Lost in Space. And that was a show that it wasn't brought back with the original characters, but they did it in the way that the dynamic was still there, the threat of everything is still there, but it's still that human family core that people pull for. It
Sure.
pulls at your heartstrings, and you want the family to win. You want the family to be at the heart of the story. So I was really impressed with that. And their ratings within the first year said everything. I think their budget doubled for the second season. So
Oh, that's what good story does.
yeah,
Yeah. We
exactly.
have a question here. Another one. Does she have a favorite episode? Does she?
Um, I think I have a few favorite. It's hard to pick just one. I really enjoyed doing any of the episodes where we were playing different characters and we got to wear different costumes. I was like, please put clothes on me. Because honestly, like it was the first year. The first year it rained 90 days out of 130 that we shot.
Wow.
It was downpouring on us all the time. So I was freezing, and everybody else had thermals underneath their clothes. And I had to just take off my jacket and in all my glory, and act like I wasn't cold. So that was difficult. No, but I liked Stone Cold. I liked that cowboy episode that we did. The Outlaw, I think it was called. I liked the episode where I played my mother in season 3. In season 3, they started giving me a lot more dialogue too, when they were developing my backstory. And I'll never forget, that was not an easy task for the writers to do, because while they were developing it, sometimes when we were on set, we would get changes to the script, like right before we would start shooting it. And as an actor, I remember one day just not being very happy with that, because I'm the one who looks bad on screen if I don't know my lines, if I don't know where I'm going with the dialogue, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I like to be prepared for anything that I'm going to do on camera. So I just don't like, a surprise of, being thrown, but it happens. It happens an awful lot where the writers want to just give you different dialogue. I remember when I was doing NCIS, and like right before we started shooting, they gave me some pretty difficult stuff and it's literally just a play on words, but then your head is all over the place trying to get the dialogue down, trying to hit your mark, and then being nervous because you're, playing opposite a pretty big celebrity who you've never met before, and, and all of that. So, but yeah, going back to that question, I think it has to do with all the different, the different episodes where we played different characters and we got to wear different clothes and that kind of stuff. That was always fun for us. But not one particular episode.
Going along what you just mentioned with dialogue and being prepared, how the freedom that a producer or director kind of gives you with the dialogue, like, you gotta say this exactly the same way, or versus like you try to say it the same way, but as long as the meaning's in there, whatever you say is good. Like
they had us stick to the script. I mean, we got the script, a week in advance or so, a couple days in advance. And if there was something within the script that we had an issue with, we would just go to the writers and say, can we just say this? And they were pretty like, as long as it had the same meaning. Yeah. Because there was quite a few times that there was stuff that was written for Veronica, for my character, that I would never say. So I would go to them and go, she's not going to high school in Alabama here, like this, like she wouldn't even know what that is. So there was a few times, but not a lot, they were pretty spot on with our dialogue.
Gotcha. So one more question here. How's the experience working with Bollywood cast in The Lost World of Khan and also the female villain role as Eliza in Shaman?
The Bollywood cast and I wasn't in that. In the
If
Lost
it's
Gold
a
of
miss,
Khan.
that's okay.
No, that's okay. Also, in the female villain role. Oh, and Charmed. That was fun. That was like another show that was special for me to work on because it was one of those shows when I was younger that I watched. That I thought, oh yeah, and I got especially with all the girls and stuff that were on it. Alyssa Milano was in a couple of scenes with me, and I mean, I used to watch her when she was little. Um, so yeah, that I loved doing all of that kind of stuff. And it shot here in Los Angeles, so that was nice. But that costume that they put me in with that one, oh my god, that was not fun.
The relationship you have with on-screen costumes has not been very favorable.
Oh my god, yeah, it has not been. I have not been fortunate in that aspect, but I pulled it off. I pulled it off.
Awesome. Jennifer, I think that's pretty much the time we have for today. But thank you so
Okay.
much for doing this. This was like really fun.
Oh
And
my god, my pleasure. Anytime.
yeah, and to everybody who asked questions and who uh, stayed online, thank you guys so much. And until next time, this is Junkyard Theory, folks.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.